of ace, 219.
The first thing I want you to do to allow you to hit faster serves is be sure that you are coiling at the beginning of the serve. I see so many players when they serve, they face their court and then they just toss and hit and there's no body rotation. Much like a baseball pitcher, we want to turn away from our target and then come back toward the target. We know that the serve is similar to a throwing motion, so a similar body mechanics will be needed. So when you turn and coil, where the upper body turns more than the lower body, that stores up energy and we get to release that energy into the ball. So it can be as simple as this. You'll set up to serve and just turn. And you'll notice my opponent can see my chest right now, and now they can't. Just that little turn and coil, where the upper body turns more than the lower body, is gonna help your serve. I'm willing to bet you have a friend who serves like this. And that's their serve. They face forward the whole time. And that's what their serve looks like. And if that's what your serve looks like, this is gonna greatly benefit you. One tip that I've noticed helps players learn this a little more easily is to put the racket on the ball. Where you're resting the racket on the ball, you're being nice and relaxed with your arms. And that just makes sure that you turn as a unit. So don't have your hands apart at the beginning, because what you'll end up doing is taking the racket back and most likely the ball stays in front. So I want you to turn, keeping the racket resting on the ball. So you'll coil and then you'll be able to uncoil into the serve.
Pre-throw position, it kind of looks like this. The way you get into this position is defined by three characteristics. First, your elbow needs to be elevated away from your body, about 90 degrees, and it's done through the shoulder flexion motion. Number two, you've got to have 90 degrees of what's called shoulder horizontal abduction. You could see this by the fact that when pros finish their windup, their elbow is going to be positioned away from their body and to the side when you view it from the back. And lastly, their elbow is going to bend in about 90 degrees until their palm is facing toward the court. Now, if you look at the top ATP servers, every single one of them is going to reach a similar position to this by executing the three motions that we've just covered. The reason why is because it sets up your arm to get into what we like to call the pro drop. Now, by getting your palm down toward the court, we do something really powerful. We set up your arm to be able to rotate back externally. You see, with the palm down and your arm bent, you're in what's called internal shoulder rotation. And this is followed by a powerful external shoulder rotation that pros execute in the racket drop. So again, it's gonna look something like this. Number one, my shoulder is raising away. I'm gonna draw my arm back. I'm gonna bend my arm in. Now from here, I'm ready to blast the ball. Now, if I take my racket out of my hand, watch what happens. I get into a very similar position to what you'll see in baseball pitchers and NFL quarterbacks. By getting into this position, I'm setting my arm up to flip back and snap in, and that's where all the fluid power comes from, just like this. No. Now this pre-throw position is so powerful because it allows you to utilize what's called the stretch shorten cycle. The stretch shorten cycle happens when you lengthen or you stretch your muscle prior to contracting it. It's kind of like when you stretch back a rubber band and then release it. The stretch creates the powerful snap. And when you're able to get that same stretch and load on your serve, you're able to create the same snap.
The back leg loading. The literature shows, research shows that there's a strong correlation between the speed that the back hip rises is directly correlated to maximum service speed. Best servers in the world, some of this research comes from Mark Kovacs, who's a leading sports scientist. Basically, the best servers in the world, the ones with the fastest velocity, have the fastest upward hip drive. And you can measure that, the speed of the hip rising. And that comes from the explosion in the back leg. So you always want to start from the ground up when you're building a powerful serve, and you want to explode from the legs. And most people jump off their front leg. It's very common. You'll see players who load And if you look at me now, if you look down at my legs, it looks like I'm kind of loaded off both legs, but I'm really not. 90% of my weight is actually on my front. So that's an optical illusion that you have to watch out for. And it's very common for players to jump off the front leg. You see a lot of players loading and exploding off one leg. Just try doing a single leg squat and you'll realize how difficult it is to explode off of one leg. So you want to use both legs to explode. And the typical ratio that's recommended by research scientists and by coaches alike is about 60% back leg, 40% front leg. So when you go into your loading, whether you do a pinpoint stance or you do a platform stance, you want to have a significant force into the ground on the back leg, the right leg, and explode using 60% of the back leg. That ratio changes as you start to go up to the ball. So in the power position, when you're loaded, we like to say about 60-40. Everyone's a little different. But as you start to transfer that energy up and out, the ratio sort of shifts to the front leg. So there is a shift that happens. But in general, a good rule of thumb is to remember 60-40. Okay, so we're talking about the power keys and the back leg loading. Try to give you some actionable exercises. One of the simple ones that you can do is just toss and load. So you can toss the ball up, go through your motion, and accentuate that back leg loading. But do it for real with the real toss. Toss it up. Accentuate the back leg. Try to get 60%, 70% on this back leg. As you're going down on that back leg, typically the left hip will push forward over the threshold of the baseline. So that's another checkpoint that you can look for. As you're loading, it's not like a direct squat straight down. You're going down and also sliding this hip slightly forward, but you don't want to over exaggerate that. And you don't want to lean in as you're doing that. You want to dig deep into the ground off that back leg. You tilt your shoulders and you sit down at that back leg, and that's going to be where you get a lot of explosion on the serve. It's interesting that the back leg is not directly responsible for the power of the serve, but the back leg is critical in initiating the kinetic chain, which leads to the upper body mechanics that leads to the big power. Another good, quick, actionable drill that you can do, this one is very simple. You reach down and you grab a ball that's resting on the ground. You load the right side of your body, including the right leg, and then you explode and throw the ball out. Sophia is going to demonstrate that. You can do that exercise by also keeping this left arm up as you reach down. It really mimics the movement of the serve, and it will help you develop that back leg loading and that explosion that's so critical and correlates to racket speed and power.
本日はサーブスピードをアップさせる3つの方法を紹介しました。1つ目はボディターンを行うこと。2つ目は上半身のパワーポジションを作ること。3つ目は後ろ足のためでした。他にサーブスピードアップの方法やコツ、ドリルを知りたい方はぜひコメントを残しておいてください。今後このようにテニス選手やテニスコーチ、テニスファンに役立つ情報をどんどん発信していくので、ぜひチャンネル登録、高評価お願いします。